So it looks like Deadpool Wolverine is about to, for the first time, officially smash together the MCU and the X-Men movie timelines. So I thought it might be fun to step through my watch list of how to watch the 101 confirmed titles of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse in chronological order. So let's do it. We start in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and meet the scrawny Steve Rogers, who becomes Captain America to fight in World War II against Hydra. We also meet Agent Peggy Carter here, and then we go into her show. And I know this is controversial, but I'm putting this show and several of the ABC shows in a separate parallel universe that is extremely similar to, but ultimately separate from the MCU. This is for a variety of reasons in canon, but for now we'll call it the Marvel Television Cinematic Universe. 1 year later, we close things out with Peggy as she takes on another grand conspiracy in Los Angeles, and then get ready, because now we're going to our third separate unique universe, as we skip ahead 20 years to meet Professor X and Magneto for the first time, and watch them assemble the first class of the X-Men. We also do briefly meet Wolverine here, and then we skip a decade to get Wolverine's very messy origin story, which is also the first time we meet a version of Deadpool. Got it? Good. Because now we're hopping back to the MCU and skipping another decade to watch Carol Danvers regain her memories and become Captain Marvel. And then hold on tight, because now we're skipping 7 years and jumping into our fourth separate universe as we meet Peter Parker / Spider-Man and Green Goblin for the first time. But don't get too comfortable here, because then we're jumping back into the Fox X-Men universe for the first released film, and we meet the main team, with the sequel following shortly after and digging into Wolverine's past. Again, back in the Raimiverse, Peter Parker is struggling to balance his life as Doc Ock causes havoc, and then just shortly after, Venom and Sandman cause even more trouble, and we close out this trilogy. And then back over in the Foxverse, various mutants get into an all-out war involving Jean Grey, and we can close out this trilogy too. And then we finally get back to the MCU for its first release, where we watch an arms dealer named Tony Stark grow a conscience. Then Tony struggles with a bit of palladium poisoning, and we also meet Black Widow and Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. here. Meanwhile, Bruce Banner deals with his own belligerent health issues, and then the spoiled Prince Thor learns that it's really not all about him as he battles his brother Loki and meets and falls for Jane. We also meet Hawkeye here, and then we finally get to the Avengers, the big crossover event for the MCU. Fury and Coulson bring together Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, Hulk, Thor, and Hawkeye for a massive team-up as they work to thwart Loki's invasion of Earth. And then we pop over to our fifth new universe to meet yet another Spider-Man, who this time looks like that one co-founder of Facebook. Back in the Foxverse, we check in again with Wolverine for a brief side quest in Japan. Then shortly after in the MCU, Thor teams with Loki to fight some elves. And then as Tony's PTSD haunts his Christmas, we close out his trilogy. And then I'm taking us back to Marvel TV, where a revived Agent Coulson assembles Ward, May, Fitzsimmons, and Skye to investigate superhumans while S.H.I.E.L.D. basically implodes. And I know calling this non-MCU is controversial, but even if you believe it resides in the main timeline, the order is the same. Speaking of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's imploding because back in the main MCU, Steve and Natasha have uncovered that it's been infiltrated by Hydra, so that's great. Then back in the Webverse, Peter deals with the enemy Electro and some girlfriend problems. Back in the MCU, the unlikely grouping of Peter Quill, Drax, Gamora, Rocket, and Groot thwart an Infinity Stone, and then they all deal with some catastrophic family issues. After that, Baby Groot gets up to some antics of his own, and then continues his adventures undeterred. Over on the TV side, the agents continue fighting Hydra, but then things get complicated when Inhumans fall into the mix, and also Skye becomes Daisy. And then we get to the first of the Marvel Netflix shows, because these were recently confirmed as canon to the main MCU. And yeah, here we meet the blind vigilante Daredevil / Matt Murdock as he takes on Wilson Fisk. And then we meet the superhuman private detective Jessica Jones, who is with the also superhuman Luke Cage, as she and allies like her sister Trish fight to stop the mind-controlling Kilgrave. And then we get to the second major crossover event as the big heroes unite once more to defeat a villain that Tony accidentally created. Then Scott Lang, a smaller hero, deals in some corporate subterfuge. We check in with Matt again as he clashes with the vigilante Frank Castle, reunites with his ninja ex-girlfriend, and fights the Hand. And remember Luke Cage? Well, he gets his own show now too, as several parties vie for control of Harlem. Stepping back into Marvel TV, the US government is now hunting Inhumans, so Coulson's team goes against them. Also turns out Hydra actually predates World War II and has this deep alien mythology and lore behind it, so that's really interesting. Back in the MCU, we then meet Danny Rand, who is the mystical Iron Fist, and he's come back to fight his sworn enemy, the Hand. And then we get our first major non-movie crossover event as Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, and the Iron Fist all team up to take down the Hand. Back on the movie side, the Avengers team now dramatically splits in half and fight each other along emotional and political lines. And we also here meet T'Challa the Black Panther, and then also finally the MCU's version of Peter Parker / Spider-Man. After all that nonsense, Natasha runs off to go reconnect with family, while T'Challa confronts the sins of his kingdom. And then we can catch up with the MCU Spider-Man as Peter learns to carve his own path. Hey, remember Frank Castle? Well, he gets his own show now too, showing off his brutal brand of justice. Then Dr. Stephen Strange breaks his hands, but luckily he is able to go and learn some magic. And now we're going back to the TV universe, and we're going to stay here for a little bit. Ghost Rider is here now, but also everyone's getting replaced by these lifelike robots called LMDs, and the real people are actually trapped in this virtual reality and they need to escape. Remember the Inhumans? Well, there's a secret kingdom of them living on the moon, but when the king's brother stages a coup, there's all sorts of drama, and a lot of them need to flee to Earth. Meanwhile, back in LA, a group of rich kids all develop powers or weapons of some sort, but then they find out their parents all ritually sacrifice teenagers in their basement, so they run away. And then the kids struggle to make it on their own as their parents hunt them. Then two teens in New Orleans realize they have interconnected supernatural powers, which they then use to fight evils in their city. And then we're back in the MCU as Jessica Jones digs into the shady organization that gave her powers. The supervillain Bushmaster arrives in New York to claim power, and Luke isn't entirely cool with that. Then Danny's old rival Davos comes to take his powers, ultimately leading Colleen to step up to the hero's plate. And then a broken and beat down Daredevil struggles to get back in action as Wilson Fisk rises again, this time allied with Bullseye. Then Thor realizes he isn't the god of hammers as he fights for the soul of Asgard. Frank's quiet new life gets interrupted when he learns that old enemies are causing trouble. And then Jessica and Trish navigate their complex relationship when a serial killer falls on their radar. Back in the TV universe, the team gets stuck in the year 2091 and needs to save the day to return home. While in the MCU back with Scott, their shenanigans lead to several broken families coming back together. And then we have another new universe, the Sonyverse, where the alien symbiote Venom befriends the reporter Eddie Brock. Back over on Marvel TV, the kids face off against aliens and the occult, and they also get to meet Cloak and Dagger. Okay, ready for our 7th new universe? Because now we meet Miles Morales, who gets bitten by a radioactive multiversal spider, leading him to ally with spider people from across the multiverse to take down his version of Wilson Fisk. Back with the S.H.I.E.L.D. team, an apparent enemy with Coulson's face threatens them all. And then in the MCU, we arrive at the most ambitious crossover project to date, as every Marvel Studios film so far comes colliding together in a valiant effort to stop a rock collector. And then in a wild last adventure jumping all across time, our agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. save the day one last time. Back in the Sonyverse, Eddie and Venom work through a rough patch in their relationship, and then we're back with Miles again, as this time he meets hundreds of more spider people, and this movie officially connects his universe to the MCU, the Sonyverse, the Raimiverse, and the Webverse, so all of that is connected now. Then in the 4th major MCU crossover movie, we skip 5 years forward and then bend time itself to set things right after the chaos of Thanos. A version of Loki then steps out of the bounds of any universe, so we might as well put this here, and then that Loki steps up to personally oversee the fate of the multiverse. Then we hop all across time and space for an anthology series that can't really be put in one place, so might as well put it here, and we check in again for a 2nd season. Now here's where things get kind of loopy with the X-Men universe. Basically, the X-Men timeline so far led us to a terrifying post-apocalyptic future. So here, Wolverine travels back in time to fix that, and therefore that creates an entirely new timeline from 1973 onward. So now we're going to go backwards a little bit to see what that new timeline in the X-Men universe is like. So 10 years later, in that new timeline, the team fights an ancient enemy, and then they again have some problems with this version of Jean. Then we meet a new and much more chaotic version of Deadpool, whose fourth wall breaking antics might make him be able to see this video, so I wait. And then he gets up to some time travel nonsense of his own. A little bit later, a group of young mutants begin experiencing disorienting horrors, and then we're going to step back once more into the Sonyverse for the story of a doctor who turns into a monster. Okay, back in the MCU, and we're mostly going to stay here now. Here, Wanda mourns her past by retreating into her favorite sitcoms. We also meet Monica Rambeau here, while Shang-Chi's past calls him to the land of his mother. Sam and Bucky deal with tangled traumas and prejudice, while Peter wishes for a normal life again, but comes to understand that he can't just trust any ally. Immortal heroes get the band back together when deadly monsters start popping up, and then we get our first proper live-action multiverse crossover event, as the MCU's Peter meets Raimi's Peter and Webb's Peter, and a whole bunch of their villains come to play as well. Doctor Strange gets lost in the multiverse as well as he encounters an inconsolable Wanda. Clint begins the long process of making amends for his past, and he also gains a new ally. And we also meet the character Echo here, and finally get the return of the MCU's Wilson Fisk from Daredevil. Then we go over to London to meet Stephen Grant, who actually shares a body with Mark Spector, and who both have powers via the Egyptian god Khonshu. Then, after T'Challa passes, Wakanda struggles to move on while facing a powerful new foe from the depths of the ocean. And then we take a brief trip to Oklahoma as Echo reunites with family and defeats Wilson Fisk once more. Bruce Banner's cousin Jen finds her legal career complicated when she gains the powers of a Hulk. Thor reunites with Jane Foster when a deadly god killer is at large. Jack Russell allies with Elsa in a deadly monster hunt. Drax, Mantis, and a very confused Kevin Bacon learn the real meaning of Christmas. And then superhero fanatic Kamala Khan gains powers of her own from her Nani's bangle. Then Scott and his family finally enter the quantum realm to face the fearsome enemy Kang. Peter and his team go on one final mission to save Rocket from his creator. Factions break out in the Skrull community on Earth, with one leader having no intentions of sharing the planet. And then Kamala meets her hero Captain Marvel, and both ally with Monica Rambeau as the Kree seek revenge. And then we step back once more into the X-Men universe for an incredibly grim look at where our Wolverine ends up. And all of that ultimately leads to our 101st title, Deadpool Wolverine. Now, this one also appears to be universe hopping, so we don't exactly know where to put it, but I'm going to leave it here for now. So that's all of them. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Also, if you are a Marvel fan that has your own multiverse order, I'm sure there are places where our lists don't entirely line up, because in mixing this many timelines and stories, there's bound to be contradictions. So I think there are actually multiple correct ways to do this, but this is just the way that I'd recommend if you want to go chronological. But let me know if you think something different. Now, do you need to watch all of this to understand Deadpool and Wolverine? Absolutely not. This is clearly overkill. But if you are a Marvel Universe purist, this will be fun. So happy binging. And get ready for Deadpool, because I have a feeling this new movie is going to make this go way past 101.